Howdy folks, I'd like to try and show you how I go about solving Sudoku puzzles offline. That may sound silly as I jabber at you while being online, but I built this narration tool to help visualize my process. I think visualizing things in this way will help you take some of these ideas and apply them to your own analog puzzles. Or digital ones, I won't judge. Since we're offline, we won't have any visual crutches, like highlighted rows or columns, so I'll be using them sparingly. Over time, you won't really need them anyway. Also, excessive hints can clutter the grid and be tedious to erase, so I generally limit my hints to only 2 cells per number, sometimes 3, it depends. I use a process that consists of 3 basic passes around the grid, and rarely a 4th brute force pass. As opportunities crop up, I might take a tangent, but I've found that only the toughest of puzzles can survive these basic passes. I use this process because I frequently forget where I am or what I was doing after I come back to a puzzle after putting it down for a day or two. I simply start over to pick up where I left off. Also, repeating these passes will sometimes let me snipe a number I'd had easily missed otherwise. For the first pass, I go over each box and then I go through each number, and I look for those numbers outside of the box that can influence the box I'm currently on. This will let me snipe the easy numbers on the grid or start placing useful hints. I call this first pass low-hanging fruit because that's exactly what this pass does. It lets us place all the easy numbers quickly, and it lets us start placing useful hints for our next pass. So given this puzzle here, we would start with the very first box, and we would start with the number 1. We would look for all the ones that can influence this box, and I see this one here. Well, this one says the 1 can't go here or here, leaving these 3 cells. Well, 3 cells isn't too terribly useful, so we're going to move on to this box, and we're going to try to place a 1 here. Well, we have this 1 influencing the box, saying the 1 can't go here or here, leaving these 5 cells. Well, that's not useful, so let's move on. This box needs its 1. This 1 down here says it can't go there, leaving 5 cells. Not useful, so we move on. This box has its 1, this box has its 1, and this box needs its 1. So let's look at all the ones, if any, that can influence this box and try and place the 1 or any hints. So this 1 says the 1 can't go here, here, or here, because it's in the same column. This 1 says the 1 can't go here or here because it's in the same row, effectively blocking off the 1 from being in any of these cells, leaving only 1 cell left for the 1 to go, which is right there. So now we move on. This box says it needs its 1, so this 1 says it can't go here, here, or here, and this 1 says it can't go here, so there's only 2 cells left, so we go ahead and we mark our hints there. Generally, in Sudoku, diagonals aren't too terribly helpful, but they can reveal pairs or other different things that can help us solve grids with more advanced techniques. So we go ahead and we mark the ones even though they're kind of at a diagonal. And we move on. This box needs its 1, so this 1 says it can't be here or here. This 1 says it can't be here or here, leaving these 3 cells. And that's not very useful, so we move on and to the final box, which has its 1. So we would repeat this process for the 2s, through each box, then the 3s, through each box, then the 4s, and so on until we go all the way up through 9. And once we're done with that, we would complete our first pass. We've picked all the low-hanging fruit we can, and then we move on to the second pass. For the second pass, I go over each box again, but this time I go through each remaining cell in the box and see if any numbers can be placed explicitly, or from any hints we placed from our first pass. It's similar to how our first pass works, we just go through each number this time before moving on to the next box. Because of prior hint placement, we might be able to leverage more advanced techniques during this pass. I call this pass shaking the tree, because we've already picked off all the easy stuff, so it's time to look at things a little more closely. Let me see if I can demonstrate what I mean by this. So in this box, we go through all the boxes and we're going to step through all of the numbers for each box again, but this time for each cell. And by this time, we should have lots of hints and we should have a lot more numbers filled out from our first pass, but we're just demonstrating the steps here for now. So this box needs its 1. We would check here. The 1 says it can't go here or here, leaving these 3 cells for the 1. That's not useful. But instead of moving on to the next box, we stay on this box and now we try and place the 3s. I'm sorry, the 2s. So this 2 here says, because we're stepping through each number, so 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way through 9. So the next number is 2. So we check the 2. This 2 says it can't go here or here, leaving only 2 cells left that the 2 can go. And that's somewhat useful, even though they're at a diagonal. But since it's 2 cells, we're going to go ahead and mark our hints for 2s. Then we move on to 3s. Well, this 3 says the 3 cannot go there. There's no other 3s, leaving these 4 cells to receive the 3. So that's not useful, so we move on to 4s. Well, this box has its 4. Move on to 5s. The box has its 5. We move on to 6s. It has its 6. Now we move on to 7s. It doesn't have a 7. And we have this 7 down here. So the 7 can't go there, leaving these 4 cells, which is not too terribly useful. So we move on to 8s. This 8 says this box's 8 cannot be here, here, or here, because it's on the same column, or same row. This 8 way over here says the 8 can't go here. We have this 8 down here, just to be thorough. So 8 can't go there, but this 8 isn't really contributing to this box much. So there's only 1 cell left for this 8 to go, and it's right here where our 2 hint was. So what happens here? Well, we just go ahead and put the 8 there. And now there's only 1 cell left. See how I have this kind of 2 just all by itself? Well, because I'm only placing 2 hints per number per box, I now know that this cell, this 2 by itself, can only be the 2. And it's safe for me to place it, just like that. And you can always go back over and verify it by looking at the current state of the grid. This 2 over here is saying the 2 can't go here, here, or here. So there's only 1 cell left for the 2 to go, kind of confirming that our hint was good. It's still valid. After we place a number, well, we can start over. Typically that's what I'll do because the state of this box has changed. So I'll go ahead and start over. I'll start at 1. So let's try and place a 1 in this box because the box is still missing its 1. So this 1 says it can't be here. Our 1 must be either here or here. And at this point, I see that these 2 1s are aligned on the same row. So I'll go ahead and I'll project out and see, does the alignment of these 1s affect or influence any other box further in the grid somewhere? So these 2 1s say the 1 can no longer be here. These 2 1s say the 1 can no longer be here or here. I've got this 1 down here that says the 1 can't be here, and this 1 down here that says the 1 can't be here. So it limits. By placing these 2 1s and ruling them out of this row and combining the other 1s, it shows that the 1 can only now go there or there. And we can come back into this box here and we can see that this 1 says it can't go here or here. So it's the 1 is going to be in one of these 4 cells, which is not terribly useful. So now we can move on to 2s. This box has its 2. This box needs its 3. There's nothing around here saying influencing this box is for 3s, so do I put the 3s in here? Typically I don't, because this isn't too terribly useful for the information it gives back to me. It doesn't justify the clutter. So no, I won't put them there. I might later if I have to. So that's the 3s. Now we move on to 4s. This box has its 4. This box has its 5. This box has its 6. This box needs its 7. And we have the 7 down here. The 7 can't be here. So the 7 is going to be here or here. And we can do the same thing that we did with the 1s if we want to. I can see that there's not a whole lot of 7s, but I mean, we can say the 7 can't be here, it can't be here, it can't be here. And if we had any other 7s down here that could influence these, we could add those as well. But kind of running low on 7s here, so let's just move on. So that is it. So we would move on. Since we're done with this box, we've iterated through all the numbers for this box, we would simply move on to the next box. Place its 1s, place its 2s, place its 3s, place its 4s, and mark its hints, and so on and so forth. Once we are done with that, then we move on to the third pass. Now, for the third pass, I take a look at the rows and the columns. Depending on how the puzzle is looking, at this point, I might only look at rows and columns with 3 or fewer cells left in them. Other times, I might just go through each cell anyway, regardless of how many cells are left. This all depends entirely on how the puzzle is playing out or how it feels. I call this pass grabbing the ladder because it's a great mnemonic. Rows and columns could sort of look like ladders in your head, and if you've made it this far, that means we've picked all the low-hanging numbers, and we've shaken loose all of the easy numbers out, so now we got to climb up into the tree and see what's left that we can pick. A row column pass at this point helps us do just that. And I actually do have little highlighters here for rows and columns just for this. So we would look through the rows and we would try and place as many numbers as we can going from 1 through 9 in each row. And then when we're done with that, we would try the same thing with columns. So for example, on this first row, we would step through each number and try and place the numbers that we can, ruling out where we can't. So this row needs its 1, and we've kind of determined already from the previous steps that the 1 is going to be here or here. So then we would move on to 2s. Well, this row has its 2. Then we would move on to 3s. Well, this 3 right here says the 3 can't be here or here. So the 3 would be in one of these 3 cells, but if the 3 is in one of these 3 cells, the 3 cannot be in that cell. So we know the 3 is going to be in one of these 3 cells in some order, somehow, some way. So we can't really do a whole lot with 3s, so we move on to 4s. This row needs its 4. Well, the 4 can't be here. The 4 can be here. The 4 can be here, but the 4 cannot be here because of this 4 down here. So it limits where the 4 can go down to 2 cells. And we do that. 4, then 5s, then 6s, and 7s, then 8 and 9. And then when we're done doing that, we just repeat the process for the next row. And the next, and the next, and the next, and the next, and the next. And then when we're done, we start over with columns. And by the time we're done here, this should chew through most puzzles. There won't be a whole lot of puzzles that will be able to survive these 3 passes. However, if your puzzle is stubborn, there is one last brute force step I take. So if the puzzle has survived multiple attempts of the prior passes, remember we can repeat these passes as much as we want depending on how the puzzle is playing out, we can always pull out the nuclear option of brute forcing a cell. I call this phase cutting the whole tree down, but I very rarely ever have to use it. This is where you simply step through each cell and find only the numbers left that can go in it and mark the hints that can only be 2 numbers. Sometimes it can be 3, but usually it's 2. Sometimes the most toughest, stubborn puzzles end up being something this pass will reveal, where there's a pair of cells somewhere on the grid that can only have 2 or extremely rarely 3 numbers over 3 cells that will reveal a freebie. Oftentimes, savagely difficult puzzles will have some silly pair hidden in the grid somewhere like this, and this nuclear option will help root it out if you can't find it on your own by now. So what do I mean by this? So all this means is that I would look at this cell and I would identify all the numbers left that can be in this cell. Can it be a 1? Yes. Can it be a 2? No. Can it be a 3? Yes. Can it be a 4? No. Can it be a 5? No. Can it be a 6? No. Can it be a 7? Yes, it can. We have the 7 marked already. Can it be an 8? No. Can it be a 9? No. So this cell can only have one of these 3 numbers in it. And if you do that across the entire grid, sometimes you'll be able to find where there's only a pair of numbers somewhere on the grid that's a hiding, hidden pair, or whatever the experts call it. And usually those are the culprits that are making a really tough puzzle very stubborn. And this process will help you find those. Fortunately, I rarely, if ever, have to break that out. Usually I'm able to chew through a puzzle with just using the prior 3 steps. So these aren't hard and fast rules. Of course, I mix them up all the time depending on how a puzzle feels, but once I have a notion of a process or steps I can take that have a general purpose, it's much easier for me to start new puzzles or pick up puzzles I put down after a few days without having to erase everything and start all over from scratch. Usually those are like really tough puzzles that I spend a day or two kind of picking at. A typical puzzle for me might look like step 1, then step 2, then step 1 again, then a sprinkling of step 3. And by then the puzzle could be either cracked or solved. If not, I'll apply all the steps again with a bit more rigor. And if the puzzle is still just being stubbornly difficult, I'll pull out the nuclear option of step 4. And that's it. I'll be narrating puzzle walkthroughs, so you'll be able to see how this all plays out yourself. As this was just a high-level overview, I hope to see you then in a park and under your favorite tree.